Spanish colonial magistrate named Polo de Ondegardo spent months tracking down a group of fugitives in Cusco in 1559. He was not looking for criminals. He was looking for the dead. He found them. The mummified bodies of several Inca emperors, carefully hidden by their attendants, still dressed, still fed, still consulted on matters of state. Some had been dead for over a century. None of them had stopped working. This was not ancestor worship in any sense a European of this time would have recognized. It was, in the most literal terms possible, a functioning system of government. To understand why the Inca state needed its dead kings to remain politically active, you have to understand what an Inca emperor actually was. The Sapa Inca was not simply a monarch in the European sense, a man who held power by hereditary right and passed it on at death. He was the kamak of his people, the animating force, the source of the vital energy, kamai, that sustained the fertility of the land, the health of his subjects, and the coherence of the cosmos. This capacity was not metaphorical. It was understood as a real, transmissible force that resided in his body, and it did not disappear when he died. The preserved corpse of a deceased emperor called Illapa was therefore not a relic or a memorial. It was an active political entity, a being who still possessed kamai, still held his palace and state, still commanded the service of thousands, and still had a voice in the affairs of the empire. The technical process by which this transformation was achieved was elaborate. According to the chroniclers, shortly after death, the emperor's viscera was removed with a precision that left no bones broken. The intestines were buried at a specific location. Tampu is mentioned in the sources, while the heart was dried or incinerated and deposited within the punchao, a golden solar idol that served as a vessel of the ancestors' collective vital force. Internally, the body was packed with cotton. Sections of pumpkin rind were inserted under the cheeks so that the skin, as it dried, retained its tension and its natural bright. The eyes were replaced with thin plates of gold. Resins were applied, among them the sap of the mole tree, which has documented antibacterial properties. The body was then exposed to the intense cold and dry air of the high Andean peaks, completing a desiccation precise enough to preserve soft tissue, hair, and facial features for centuries. Spanish observers who saw these bodies firsthand note with some unease that they look, above all, as if they were sleeping. The political consequences of keeping the dead in the game were profound, and they operated through a system known as a split inheritance. When an Inca emperor died, his Illapa retained absolute ownership of everything he had accumulated in his life. His palaces, his agricultural land, his herds, his treasuries, even his servants. All of it passed not to his successor, but to his panaca, the corporate kingship group formed by all his descendants except the ones chosen to rule next. The panaca administered these assets in perpetuity, financing the cult of the dead emperor and maintaining his household as if he had simply become unavailable for certain meetings. The new emperor, by contrast, inherited the title and the military apparatus, but nothing else. He started his reign empty-handed. This was not a design flaw, it was the engine of imperial expansion. Every new Sapa Inca was structurally compelled to acquire his own resources, which meant conquest. The Tawantinsuyo did not grow because its rulers were particularly aggressive by temperament. It grew because the system gave each of them no other viable option. A king who failed to conquer failed to build a future cult. He will die and be forgotten. On the other hand, a king who conquered founded a panaca, endowed his resources, and continued to govern from beyond death. The panacas themselves were not passive custodians. They were powerful political factions, and they used their ancestor as a weapon. Because the dead emperor still held property and still commanded institutional loyalty, the panaca that served him controlled access to that loyalty. The mummy was the panaca's charter, the legal and spiritual foundation of every claim it made to land, water, and precedence in the hierarchy of Cusco. The most visible expression of this system was the investiture ceremony for a new emperor. The mummified bodies of all previous rulers were brought out of their palaces and carried in their litters to the great plaza of Cusco. They were seated in order of seniority. Attendants spoke on their behalf, and in this ritual dialogue, the assembled dead formally approved the new sovereign and conferred upon him the authority of the ancestral line. That was not theatre, or rather it was theatre in the classical sense, a performance with real legal and political weight, whose outcome was binding. A new Inca who could not demonstrate the approval of his predecessors lacked legitimacy in a way that no military victory could compensate for. The same principle operated in everyday governance through the oracle system. The Iyapas spoke through the Mamacuna, the trained mediators who literally gave voice to the mummies during consultations, and what they said carried the authority of the ancestral line. This mechanism served a function that was at once religious and deeply practical. It allowed subordinate groups, provincial lords and factions within the Cusco elite to express dissent or advance interest without directly confronting the living emperor. The dead king could say what the living one could not safely be told. The Wauki, or stone double, extended this logic further. Each emperor possessed a lithic effigy, sometimes elaborately worked in precious metal, sometimes a rough and carved stone, that contained physical relics from his body, hair clippings, nail parings. These fragments were understood not as symbols, but as metonymic carriers of the emperor's kamaguen, his vital essence. The Wauki could attend a military campaign in the emperor's place, receive the same reverence as the living sovereign, and issue oracular pronouncements through a priest. It was, in effect, a portable delegation of royal authority, a mechanism for making the king ubiquitous in an empire that stretched from present-day Colombia to central Chile. The complementarity between the Iyapa and the Wauki followed a gender logic that structured much of Andean cosmology. The preserved body was associated with the feminine, with the earth and agricultural fertility. The stone double with the masculine, with war and the management of water. Together they constitute a complete sovereign presence, divisible and deployable across the territory. The Spanish recognized with considerable clarity what the mummies actually were. They were not confused by them. They understood that the Iyapas were the organizational center of a system that kept indigenous political loyalty and economical resources flowing along pre-conquest lines. Destroying that system meant capturing the dead. Polo de Ondegardo's 1559 operation was the most systematic of this effort. The bodies he recovered were transported to Lima and deposited in the Hospital de San Andres, removed from Cusco, separated from their panacas, stripped off the attendants and resources that had maintained their active political existence. Colonial chroniclers, among them Jose de Acosta, reclassified them as embalsamados, anatomical curiosities of a sophisticated but ultimately pagan technology, objects of natural history rather than sovereignty. The reclassification was deliberate. To call a mummy a medical achievement was to deny that it was a king. The campaigns that followed under the banner of extirpación de idolatrías went further. The policy of reducciones forcibly relocated indigenous community into Spanish-style towns, severing them from their ancestral sites. Extirpadores interrogated suspects under torture for the location of hidden malquis, the preserved ancestors of non-royal communities, and organized public burnings. In 1609, a celebrated auto de fe in the Plaza de Lima resulted in the incineration of thousands of bodies that communities had preserved for generations. The resistance was sustained and inventive. Communities returned secretly to the Macais, dry caves or old settlement sites to feed and consult their ancestors. When physical remains were destroyed or confiscated, indigenous nobles adapted colonial forms, commissioned painted portraits, organized festive representations, found ways to maintain the visible presence and political claim of their lineage within a Christian order that had no vocabulary for what they were actually doing. The Spanish, constrained by their own concept of idolatry as representational as the worship of an image, consistently failed to grasp the Andean principle of Kamai, by which the vital essence of the ancestor genuinely inhabited the body, the stone, and later the canvas. They destroyed the vessels without understanding that, for those who maintained the cult, the power simply moved. The yapas of the Inca emperors have not been found. Polo de Ondegardo's confiscated mummies disappeared from the historical records sometime in the 16th century. Their current location, if they survive at all, is unknown. What archaeology has found instead are the frozen children of the high peaks, the imperial roads, and the empty palaces of Cusco, still organized according to the Panaca system, even after the empire that built them was gone. The dead had shaped the landscape so thoroughly that their absence, when it finally came, was its own kind of presence. You'll find on our channel the story of 3 of those children, specifically the ones found at 6,739 meters on the summit of Yuyayaco, preserved well enough that 5 centuries later we can read their diet, their health, and their origins in the chemistry of their hair. That video covers the Capacocha ritual in full and the archaeological and ethical debates that follow the discovery. It's a different world from the one we visit today, but it is unmistakably the same empire.